Hi, everyone. And thank you for joining us for our Asian American and Pacific Islander American Voices event. My name is Jordan Brooks, and I'm going to be moderating the conversation today. I'm the Associate Director for Community Inclusion here at SOM. So I have a responsibility and lead our diversity recruiting events with respect to admission, and I help lead some of our initiatives when it comes to our affinity clubs as well. So thank you all for joining us, and we were able to poll you all to get your top 5 MBA questions. And we have a ton of students here today who are ready to answer those questions and also have some time with you in smaller breakout sessions a little bit later. So I guess logistics for today is we'll spend the first half of the time together responding to those top 5 questions so you can get some answers to the questions that you had voted in. And then later on, we'll break off into smaller groups so you can have more intimate conversations with some of our students today. So before I go on, if we can just get some intros from our students, I'll start with Selena.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Selena. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently a second year. Before school, I worked in technology consulting. I'll hand it off to Derek.
Yeah, thanks, Selena. Hey guys, I'm Derek. I'm a first-year MBA. Came from oil and gas, where I spent 7 years doing engineering and trading, heading to McKinsey for the summer. And I'll popcorn it over to Yuan.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuan. I'm a first year at SOM. Prior to business school, I was in the startup world. I actually founded my own ed tech startup, and then at SOM, I'm going to venture capital this summer.
Let's go with Jimmy next.
I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Jimmy. I'm a second-year MBA. Prior to Yale, I was a consultant, and post-Yale, still deciding, but most likely going to an internal strategy role at Riot Games. Then I'll pop it over to Swapna.
Hi everyone, I'm Swapna. I'm a second year. And before SOM, I was working at Boston Children's Hospital on a neuroimaging project. And after SOM, staying in the healthcare field and medical devices. I'll pass it to Locke.
Hey everyone, I'm Locke. I'm a second year MBA. Before SOM, I was in the US Army for 8 years. Then I worked for a little bit for nonprofit. Last summer, I spent my internship working in renewable energy. And then after I graduate, I'm going to be working in tech and corporate strategy.
And last but not least, Alice, can you close us out?
Of course. Hey everyone, I'm Alice. I am a first year MBA here. Prior to SOM, I worked in both financial services and management consulting. And this summer, I'll be spending my internship at Amazon.
So thank you all. And so today we're going to talk about the experience that our students have had throughout their process, going through from the admissions process, enrolling in their experience while as a current student. So we polled a question. So we have the top 5 questions. We're going to just start off with what life is like at SOM for you all. So what's life like for an PIA student at SOM?
Yeah, I can go ahead and kick that off. I think it's wonderful and amazing, and I do really honestly mean that. I feel connected not only to my IPA peers, but also with the broader SOM community. And I think the emphasis here is not only on diversity, but really creating inclusion and equity for all in their experiences and the way they access the community here on campus. So you're really encouraged and enabled to find multiple spaces for you to celebrate all the multifaceted aspects of who you are. And so for me, it's not only bringing in that perspective in the classroom as a Chinese American woman, but really thinking about what diversity, inclusion, and equity means beyond just my own identity through my work in student government and as the student life chair.
Jimmy, how about for you?
Yeah, just some background on APIA here at SOM. So when I started last year, I'm a second year now, we didn't have a APIA group here at SOM. So it's actually a fairly new organization. And when we discussed creating an organization for APIA, Jordan, the community inclusion, SOM were incredibly open to creating this community group here. And I think, so 2 points here. One point is that because we're fairly new, we actually have a lot of potential to take this club and this organization like anywhere we want to go. and I can talk a little bit more about what we do at APIA. But the second point here I want to make is that I think, especially given like recent events, there's a greater focus, I want to say, and there's a greater sense of identity for Asian Americans here. I'm sure for a lot of you as well, but here at SOM as well. What that really means for our community is that even on things like our Slack channels, even the events we post, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of energy around the issues that are impacting us today. And we, even in our Slack posts, we have a lot of one-off Slack posts, people posting resources, discussion topics, asking how we can be supported. So I think it's a great, it's a group that's very important to me, and I think that the focus here for an APIA student at SOM is improving and presents a great opportunity.
Thank you for that. And Derek, can you share with us from your experience how it's been?
Yeah, for sure. Especially in light of recent events, I can't find a better place to spend my time and like a better group of people to be with, just because it's an incredibly safe space to talk openly about your own personal experiences and backgrounds. I've had personally a complicated relationship with my heritage in the back, in my prior experiences, especially working in oil and gas. So coming here is kind of refreshing that we're enabled to stop and take the time to reflect and discuss our experiences and kind of figure out how to go forward. One of those instances, I'm a leader of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Association, along with Jimmy, and one of my focuses is on external relationships. So like professional development, coordinating with alumni. So we recently worked with 2 alumni who are incredibly passionate about creating this community at SOM in kickstarting an alumni panel to talk about not only their experiences in business school, but also afterwards. So it's just really cool to hear from people who are in positions that I'd love to be in, years down the road, who've walked, through the halls of Evans Hall or like SOM in general, and just get their perspectives as well. So it's definitely a very close community here, and really appreciate my time.
So before I go to the next question, you all brought up a good point about the club and how new the club is. So can you speak to some of the initiatives that you've done since being a club, but then also prior to being an official club? Because you all made a ton of impact even last year. So can you speak to that a little bit so the audience can know what types of initiatives you all do?
Yeah, so I'm one of the second year leaders, and our club is really divided into 3 pillars. One is the social, so I'm the social chair. So last year, pre-pandemic times, we hosted a lot of events, both with other diversity groups. Like we had like a Jeopardy event, we had like food tasting events, and then also within other Asian clubs. So just for context, APIA is like a organization, but there's also clubs that's specific to different cultures, like the Greater China Club, Korea Club, Southeast Asia Club, and so on. So we and then this year our main event was going to be, before COVID came, like a food tasting type of cultural affinity with all the Asian clubs. But obviously we can't do that in person. But from a social standpoint, what we've done is we've created smaller groups. And we've also hosted a smaller group called Families, and 6 to 8 that hang out together. And then we also hosted like a lot of virtual events. Derek spoke a little bit about the professional side with that event. He hosted another professional event. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there was a huge Canva conference. So it's like a group of all the top tier business schools. And we just had a conference this weekend. We got like people like Simu Liu, to come, the founder of like Boba Guys. This is like Joe Bay, who's one of the co-president of KKR, a whole bunch of like who's amongst Asian America. And we had like over 500 attendees. So that was also a really cool event. And then the third pillar we have is community inclusion. And there are some of the events we host are like, we're part of the affinity group circles, which is small group of like six students or so from different affinities that come together on a monthly basis to discuss whatever topic that is important to them, just to understand and learn from one another. I don't know if I'm missing anything, Derek.
No,
If
I
you
think
have
you
anything
covered
else.
it all. I think what's pretty exciting is that it's not only SOM. So there's the Asian American Cultural Center here at Yale that we collaborate with amongst, Yale College and all the other graduate schools here. And then, like Jimmy mentioned, we're also collaborating with other business schools. So that's the most exciting thing, where you get to meet other people in your shoes at, different programs around the country, forming this first conference, the inaugural conference this year. And Yale was a big part in forming that and planning it in only a few months' time. So yeah, generally an exciting time to be a part of this group.
Thank you both. So we'll stay within the culture of SOM. And can you both, or can all three of you actually speak to how diversity is talked about at SOM?
Yeah, I can kick that off, and I'll bring in the perspective of being a student government member here. I think diversity and beyond that, like I mentioned earlier in my previous response, equity and inclusion are very important. I think it's really threaded into the way that student government wants to approach building that community up on campus, making sure that diverse perspectives are not only represented, but also included in the conversations and decision-making, opportunities that we have. And I think what I really admire beyond my time on student government is even in the classroom, I think my peers and fellow students are really committed to learning from each other and learning from our many different experiences and perspectives. And so it's a very inclusive space that I think is naturally inherent in our classrooms and academic experiences. And I do really appreciate that. And that was kind of one of the things that when I was thinking about applying, a current alum had mentioned, or not current alum, geez, a current student had mentioned, and that's most certainly come true since my time here.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think leadership is really important, right? Because there's a tone for the entire school. And Dean Kerwin Charles, he is an economist, and his entire research has been focused on inequality amongst different groups here in the United States. So I think just from that perspective, right, and also the perspective just like SOM in general, educating leaders for business and society. So I think that rhetoric and that type of culture gets passed on. There's plenty of diversity events here at SOM. They're very published. So what I would say is that, like, you have the opportunity to explore and talk to all different types of people, and you just have to take that initiative to attend these events. And they're very open. Like I attended like event with the Black Business Alliance last year, and it was a great time just getting to know people and just meeting people, for example. So I think there's plenty of opportunities for you to engage with diverse members of the community.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree with what Jimmy and Alice were saying. I think, to build on that, it's just in the DNA for our school. You can see it woven into stuff like our curriculum with like in society, power and politics, just encouraging, engaging discussions in class. And that's a lot of like what we're here to do and learn is engaging with our classmates who come from all different walks of life.
Thank you. So we're going to switch gears now over to the application process. So the next question ended up being, what was the application process like for you, and how did you prepare? Let's start with Derek.
Ooh, application process. That's a good question. I think, I started off by looking at the different programs out there and just discussing with folks in my network. We're just like, one step removed, just to gauge what the different experiences are like at each school, and then narrowing my choices down from there. But don't envy you being in the position of taking the GMAT currently. I remember those days of studying and grinding for that. But I mean, what I found the most useful out of the whole process was really, I think, the self-reflection piece. I didn't value that as much during my career. So I, again, really appreciated the time to actually sit down and reflect, especially for my essays, in terms of like where I'm coming from and where I want to go. I think that's the most important takeaway when you're going through the application process, because once you come in the fall, it's going to be even more important that you get your story right, and you get to, because there's so many opportunities here at school. You want to know who you are to be able to make the most out of the experience when you're here.
How about you, Jimmy? How was the application process for you?
It was stressful, to be honest, working and applying at the same time. And it took me a while to, like Derek said, it took me a while to get my story. So one, I think don't underestimate, like, don't think this is just something you can do in like 2 weeks, right? Maybe some of you can, and you're super impressive that way. But for me, it just took a while to like, I had like 4 different drafts of my different types of essays that I could potentially submit, for example. The other thing I would say is that like, just reach out to people who are already in the schools, right? They're happy to talk to you. A lot of them, especially here at Yale, I think we focus a lot on people who fit into the culture here, right? And people who really want to go here. So what that means is like, just understanding the school a little bit more than what's on the brochure, right? And you can get that by attending events like this, for example, listening to us speak or reaching out individually to us, or even to other schools that you may be interested in, just so you can like kind of highlight that, like you've done more than just reading a brochure and you're actually really interested in attending here.
Alice, what about you?
I echo everything Derek and Jimmy have said. I think the only one additional piece of advice I would say is to just make sure you actually answer the questions that's being asked for you in the Yale essays. They're very interesting and unique and special, but don't try to adapt something else or make it into this paper essay that you think Yale wants to hear. It's most certainly something that you need to be honest about what you really think and value, and how that aligns with SOM's values and culture, I think will come naturally. So that's just that.
I'm so glad you said answer the question that Yale is asking, because, you know, being a reader, it's kind of frustrating when we start to read essays, and the question is, it's a unique question. The current question is asking what's the biggest commitment you've ever made, and while that's a challenging question, it's still a question within itself. So it's frustrating when applicants don't answer that question. So I definitely hear you. And to Derek's point, it's absolutely an opportunity for you to really self-assess and reflect on who you are, what experiences you've had, and what you can also then bring to the SOM community. So our application is definitely unique in that regard, and really does present an opportunity for you to really look at you, because that's who we want to admit. We want, as much as you can, as much as you're comfortable, we want you to be transparent and comfortable with sharing with us, because it's much more than just an application number. We're really looking to figure out who you are and what type of community member you'll be, and what addition you'll add, you'll bring to the SOM space. And then to another point, the GMAT versus the GRE. I know everyone is preparing for the test, and quite frankly, some take the GMAT over the GRE, but so all of you know, we don't have a preference over either test. We tell every applicant to take the test that they feel that they're going to be able to perform best on. So if you have an affinity towards one, by all means take that, but understand that we don't have a preference for the test. So we're just at 20 minutes now. So let's go to the next question. So since we're on that topic of applications, the next question that was voted in was, how did you convey your story? And I think that kind of leads beautifully into this question. So if you can respond to what your story, not necessarily what your story was, but how did you get it across, so the admissions folks can understand who you are as an applicant? Let's start with Jimmy.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I have 4 different stories that I was trying to decide on which one to use. And to Derek's point earlier, it doesn't have to be something like super crazy, like you once, like your biggest commitment was like hiking Mount Everest or something crazy like that, right? My story was, it took a lot of reflection. My story was actually about like a really tough time I had with tutoring this kid and being a mentor to this kid who kind of was like very shy. And I kind of wanted to give up at one point, but I stuck with it because I realized I entered the relationship not for me, but more for him, right? So I think that's like a story anybody can have, honestly. But I think you kind of put your own like you have to be true to yourself. Like that story actually meant a lot to me. So so that's kind of like how I went about it. I think a story, what we're looking for is maybe what was the challenge? How did you overcome the challenge? What did you learn from it? And how does that kind of relate to either your future goals or SOM and your interest in SOM? It's a lot to fit in, I don't know, like 400 words or whatever the limit is. But that's kind of like the theme or like the structure that I use to convey an important matter to me.
How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just thinking about why I wanted to go to business school in the first place and why Yale. And then finally, like, what kind of impact I want to make and how did I think going to business school would help me achieve that. So for me, the way I answered that question was really asking those three main questions and realizing that I am someone who is really driven by making an impact in my immediate community and thinking about how to scale that up in the future. And so I was able to bring in a few examples from work and outside of work to really be able to tell that story. And I think just to emphasize, your story doesn't have to be the most unique thing, like you climbed Mount Everest. It just has to be very touching and, poignant to who you are and speak to what you can accomplish and what your potential is. So that's how I approach mine.
But if you did climb Mount Everest, you should definitely use that as a
I was
1,000%.
too. If you did climb Mount Everest, it's probably going to be brought up at the table. We'll definitely have a good time talking about you climbing Mount Everest. So if you do have something cool like that, not to say that if you didn't, you're not cool, but like if you have something like that, by all means, tell us that, because that's the uniqueness that we talk about when we're trying to put together a really diverse class. And so it's about diversity in experience, diversity in background. So all of those things really make up what an SOM class is. So definitely talk to us about those things. But if you didn't and you're kind of normal like me and didn't climb a mountain ever, it's okay too. We have plenty of students who are like that. So you'll find space in SOM. Derek, how about you?
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, like judging based on my learning teammates, everyone's incredibly impressive, and I wouldn't want to read their essays because it'd probably outshine mine. But I think when I was going through my own essay process and application process, I just reflected on my experience leading up to business school and why I wanted to go. So in terms of that main essay of like the biggest commitment you've made, I was at an oil refinery with like 800 employees, but I was a minority, not only in that I was one in like 10 Asians out of the 800 employees, but also I was management and not union. Most of the folks there were unionized. So it was just making a commitment to getting to know the operators that I work with, gain their trust and ensure their safety in the 6 years that I spent in the field. So that was the story that I fell back to because that's the one that I felt was most open and honest and true to my experience.
Thank you for that. So what we're gonna do, those are the 4 questions, 4 of the 5 questions. So just with the respect to time, I'm gonna actually pause the